I am absolutely thrilled to be here with all of you. I feel like showed up to the Grand Slam. It's my turn at bat. So I'm excited to get a chance to join all of you. I wanted to start actually with a little bit about myself. As Kevin rightly introduced, I currently lead the Partner Ecosystem Success Team, which is quite honestly, a new transformation that we're doing at Red Hat about how we engage with the ecosystem. But I have led Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I have led the platforms team. And during that time, I spearheaded the Edge initiative, which is a company-wide initiative at Red Hat around Edge. And so I love to get a chance to talk about Edge and how open plays into this and what we're seeing and what I'm seeing happening in the industry. My background actually kind of lends itself to some of that excitement about Edge. I'm a metallurgist by training. I've done chip design and chip architecture work for many years early in my career, and then moved into system architecture and server design, into then infrastructure software, of course, operating systems and things, and now moving into more of how that feeds and links into an ecosystem. Nowhere in the industry does that type of that breadth of work come together better than in the Edge. It's one of the reasons why I am so excited about the world of Edge and the way it's taking on now, is because it offers the opportunity to take new types of architecture, really suited for new types of workloads, doing things differently when it's close to data, to new server designs that are small, lightweight, into all the way out to the new types of machine learning, deep learning applications. All of that comes together in the Edge, and it is going to take an ecosystem focus with dependencies upon how you translate that into industry solutions. It all comes together in the Edge. I look at, I sometimes say that Edge is like, people ask, well, why Edge now, right? Because Edge has been around for a long time. People have required the needs for Edge for a long time, but why now is because now is the time when there is architecture and hardware is offering differentiation in ways that are able to be consumed easily now. We have more data being created everywhere, and getting compute close to that data, absolutely critical. New applications are being developed, like machine learning, AI. That's driving a new possibility at the Edge. You link that now with the changes that is happening in the network space. Those four things coming together make Edge absolutely optimized to take and change the world now. So I'm super excited about Edge. We're working all over Red Hat in order to drive that, but I'd love to get a chance just to talk about what we're seeing. If you jump to the next page, I wanted to start with a little bit about the view of the market. Technology has risen as one of the key business differentiators to drive changing a customer experience. Competitive advantage has never been more tied to delivering a unique customer experience than it is now. And technology, and in particular Edge, and using personalized data, is driving that transformation. And so now we're seeing this real trend. By 2025, this piece of work said 50% of enterprise managed data will be created and processed outside data center or cloud. This is how quickly this transformation is happening. And again, to me, it's all because of this like perfect storm happening right now between those four factors we talked about. If you jump to the next page, tying this to the competitive advantage that Edge can provide, it truly does bring the opportunity for a business differentiator. Digital transformation and how that changes a customer experience, that is implemented by using new technologies. And in particular, I think Edge has a key spot to play. To do it, however, has to be done in a way that is done with the ability to scale. And in order to scale well, truly need consistency in how that is done. It has to be built upon open standards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Partly that is because this will continue to evolve. There's so many layers in the stack of what gets delivered at the Edge. from the architecture, from the hardware, all the way up to the applications. All of those layers to be able to consume innovation at different layers within that stack is going to require standards that are set to deliver interoperability. And then finally, versatility. It's all about being able to create a foundational platform where you can build your applications, move them with versatility from the data center to the cloud, out to the edge, in order to really get this business value that edge brings the opportunity for. If you jump to the next one, a couple of comments just on the business drivers. More and more with the ability to have data and with the capability to have applications to really analyze and give actionable guidance based upon that data, this is about fostering data-driven outcomes. It's about making that compute near the data, give actionable insight on what to do. It is about providing new experiences. This middle really ties to that customer experience, immersive experience, quick experience with things like streaming and access anywhere you go. Edge plays a role there as well in making sure that the data and accessibility to data reaches every place. And finally, there is absolutely security and compliance. And I think this is one of the opportunities in the industry as we move forward is it comes down to scale, speed, and security in this edge world, making sure that from day one, it's prepared to scale, that it is really the ability to deploy applications quickly out at the edge, and that it is all secure and meets compliance needs. Many of these will be delivered in regulatory industries, and that's going to set a high standard for how we move into this edge world. Jumping to the next page, I wanted to touch in on an example of this. So SNAM is an Italian-based natural gas infrastructure company, one of the largest infrastructure deploying natural gas in Europe. They really set out to do a digital transformation to change and drive better efficiency about how they deliver applications across their massively widely distributed infrastructure space. Like most good engineers, right? I always want to jump to the results here. They took on a massive piece of work and the results really paid off. And this ties, I think, to this sort of speed and scale and security. It's exactly what they went after. We look at improved time to delivery of new software by more than 10x. That is a developer's dream, right? When you can create something and deploy it 10x faster in as little as 30 minutes, and they scale these workloads and applications across both private and public cloud. This is a type of, and it's being done in a regulated industry. So I view this as kind of, these are the examples that really excite me about Edge, bringing together the possibilities of this speed, scale, and security. Jumping to the next page, I want to spend a bit of time on how we see some of the essentials when building Edge. The time is now, but the value that Edge will deploy will go on and on. So setting of the foundation in the technology and how things are deployed, that is essential today to set the future of what we will all be able to realize around Edge. A few things in this. One is there does have to be consistency and a common language from the data center out to the edge. That is going to be essential in order to drive consistency of how applications are deployed, to improve security, to make sure that applications that are built for one location can expand out to the edge. How do you pull those applications out to where the data is, where the sensors are? That common language has to be spoken across the edge. That has to be foundational to drive security. Operational consistency is equally important. How do you manage those edge sites? That sets you up for scale. By the time you need hundreds of thousands of deployments, it's too late to think about scale then. That has to be from a day one point of view. How do you set yourself up to scale, creating the tools? This is a huge opportunity in the edge space. The tools and the management capabilities is essential. Third is really about this open foundation. This is about interoperability. One of the things I find most fascinating about the world of open source, when you look at all the packages and all the projects out there in the open source world, oftentimes people can look at something that's standard or standardized. How do I have to meet the standard, as something that's limiting? And yet the world of open source has really taught us that standards are what enable interoperability, and that's what fuels the innovation in the open source world today. By each project conforming to a set of standards, to a way things are done, it ensures that interoperability between the projects will continue on, that we can all build upon that innovation. And that's essential to this open foundation and the value it brings. It ensures that new innovations will be able to be pulled in and deployed. And again, coming back, Edge is so complicated from bottom to top in the stack, and all the ways you can get value from the architecture to the application. This type of foundation is really key on open. And I believe very strongly, of course, we at Red Hat believe very strongly in open source, but this is the reason why. It's all about interoperability and the ability to consume innovation as it comes. If you jump to the next slide, I want to jump in a little more on open source and what that and how we view it, and how do you get that value from open source. There are millions and millions of repositories out there, a ton of work being done. This is where the innovation is thriving. New things are being tested, new projects created, new projects stopped, but this is the participatory world of innovation. You put that into the hands of developers, and the developers are developing in open source. There's a lot of change going on in the industry, in the market, and technology. The one thing I feel very confident on is that the next era of applications will be built on open source. And the reason is because it allows that flexibility for everything else to change. Once you build through the open source standards, et cetera, for interoperability, that enables the opportunity to pull together all the innovation that will happen tomorrow, the next day, the next year, and going forward. And businesses are absolutely adopting the open source. That is fueling a new set of requirements back into open source that is creating this self-sustaining environment. If you jump to the next page, this is how Red Hat has really focused on delivering value from the open source world. The beauty of open source is the participation of it, inviting everyone to come to the table and participate. Those projects, however, start to become valuable when they get pulled together in certain ways to solve problems. And that starts with the integration piece here that you see in the middle. Multiple projects coming together, leveraging that interoperability to really create upstream projects that focus on open community platforms, still having everyone engage. That fast-moving world can sometimes be tough to figure out how you pull that into an enterprise or a production environment. And that's where there are spaces to stabilize. How do we commercialize? How do we bring something forward that is stable, predictable, has a life cycle, and then can intercept with other applications, other independent software vendor applications, other kinds of capabilities and tools with a predictable life cycle, so that operationally things are predictable. So the open source world has all three of these, and all three are essential if we're going to get value. How does everyone participate to drive that innovation as quickly as possible? How does it get integrated into things that can solve problems? And then finally, where do you come into a stabilized view that can be deployed in production and be counted upon with a life cycle, with support, and with certification standards in order to meet things like compliance? If you jump to the next page for a moment, open source, and there's no better example of it than Linux, has really set a standard for the value it can bring to the enterprise, how it can create this foundation, but also how it doesn't compromise on the innovation that's coming in. Open source is now widely used across all markets, across all industries, public clouds are built upon them, and they've certainly changed the ball game for how infrastructure gets deployed. And we did a survey, but it was a blind survey. They didn't know it was Red Hat. We just wanted to find out what is the temperature in the market around open source. And we're seeing an incredible quest to use open source in the enterprise for these reasons that we just talked about around real innovation capturing. If you jump to the next page, I love this chart to start to lead into about how edge is done and how technology, no technology stands alone. It's all about the evolution and how it comes together. You take the data center, right, which all of us are very familiar with, and the work and the requirements of getting work done in the data center. That sort of expanded into the world of virtualization, where you could maximize the value you could get out of every individual server, and into private cloud capabilities. The world has now evolved heavily into how do we deploy applications in a more modular way with containerization, really change the flexibility of how applications can get delivered. Now you can deploy that on public clouds and multiple public clouds. That's key in order to bring in this flexibility. And in order to manage all of that, bring in automation. Now we're moving into this third layer, I would say, which is where cloud services, managed cloud services, folks are really looking to leverage cloud services so they don't have to manage all that infrastructure. They can trust that someone's managing it on their behalf, but they know how that application is going to work. They know how to interface with it, and it's providing them great efficiencies. That now enters into their world. Edge, that's what we're here to talk about. We'll talk more about that. And AI and machine learning comes in. I look at this picture, and this is what we view as what we call open hybrid cloud. Open hybrid cloud is the ability to build an application, deploy that application how and where you need it with the flexibility you need it, and be able to manage it wherever that application sits. And so when you pull the capabilities of all of this together, with an ecosystem, with the partners, with the applications, with the tooling that's required, that starts to create the world of the open hybrid cloud. And so edge is a key piece of this. This is where the differentiation now is being driven. And I do think it's tightly tied to things like AI, ML, which are driving a huge opportunity. So when we look at this, just touching back on one of the things earlier, you do need something that's consistent across it. And that's where I view open source, things like Linux, the language of Linux, speaking across all of this, starts to help bridge this together so that you can leverage the different components in the way you wish, but you have a common language that's spoken across it. I want to spend some more time on this AI, ML, and edge, of course. If you jump forward, here's a great example of Alstom. They are a railway communication. They deploy all sorts of capabilities around mobility solutions. They provide sustainable foundations for the future of transportation. They went in to really change their entire business model. They're driving a smart transformation of the railway industry to be more secure, more reliable, more flexible. That was all driven with a focus on how do they deploy edge capabilities. They transitioned their whole business model. And I think, as the world is changing, we're seeing more and more of these business model transformations. They changed from selling purely railway device hardware to offering a data-driven IoT hardware and software platform. And this is this transformation between moving from being truly a hardware company into a more software and platform company that is able to scale and deliver more to customers. They reduced manual process. Automation was key because of the scale that they operate in, and it was built upon open source. And they did a lot of work around security. As you can imagine, it's highly regulated, and cyber hardening. So this was another example where we really saw this transformation of a business being able to be done, leveraging open source without compromising security, in fact, focusing on cybersecurity and hardening capabilities. and bringing in automation in order to deliver at the scale that they needed. If you jump to the next one, I wanted to just, this is one way that we're starting to look at how edge and breaks out as we talk about this open hybrid cloud, being able to deliver the data center public cloud all the way out to the edge. There are several spaces in edge that we're engaged in. Some spots are, I call it digital enterprise edge. That's when we take the data center and we literally spread the data center out to the edge and distribute it. There's provider edge. That's like the networking folks, absolutely key to continue to spread that network, because that's what enables the rest of the edge to happen. Operations edge is a key spot. Places like manufacturing, getting that AI ML learning out there, making decisions, streamlining operations capabilities, and this connected product edge. One example, this is where edge is in a product, but that whole industry is changing. In-vehicle operating systems is a perfect example of this. The cars that we drive are now moving data centers, right, rolling along the street. That changes the way that edge is looked at in a vehicle. It requires edge capabilities, highly regulated to deliver certain capabilities and a customer experience all at once in the vehicle. But all of these areas of edge, quite diverse, all tied into the ability to have this common platform. Jumping forward real quick, operations edge is one spot that I think is really taking off. This is an example of things like an industrial use case around a smart factory. How do you pull together various manufacturing plants, have that tie into core data center, make sure that you have hardware capabilities and AI ML software capabilities with all the sensors in the manufacturing plant, able to gather data, make decisions, tie back to the core data center, providing information, but really get that engine flowing so that the data gathering is happening on the floor in the manufacturing plant. Decisions are being made in real time, and it's all being pulled together up at the core data center. This is about bringing speed of decision making right close to the data in the manufacturing plant in an extremely consistent way. Tying this then to how you start to scale this throughout industries and across industries. If you jump to the next page, this is a model that that we have taken on that I think is really great in that the world of open source offers. Focusing on things like validated patterns, which is really leveraging capabilities like GitOps, building off of GitOps, architecture as code. How do you take examples where you've had success around something like a manufacturing plant example and having AI in there, pulling together a GitOps type view of pulling that infrastructure into code, putting that out on GitHub, having that open, having other people add to it, add their innovation, be able to tailor it for what they need to do in a different industry vertical. This is like bringing open source into this GitOps world. And I think there's huge opportunity in the edge space for this to happen. How do we then get more collaborators? I do think industry-driven solutions are going to be key to driving edge quickly into the market. Capabilities like this, where patterns are put in place in a place like GitHub, where everyone can innovate them on, tailor them for the needs of industries, I think is a great way to spearhead this forward. If you jump to the next page, if you would, this ties to the industry piece. Edge maturity will be different across different spots. We're already seeing that in the market. Highly regulated industries, deep ecosystem specialty is coming in to deliver it there. There is deep knowledge that is needed to deliver upon these edge use cases for these spots. This is where I think that pulling together something like this GitOps environment at a platform level, augmenting it that with an ecosystem that really understands the problems in these industries, this is where we can all come together to kickstart and really kick the flywheel in the momentum of this edge space. Next, I wanted to just wrap up here as I come to an end with a with one more example, because I think it really comes to when you start to see how folks are using it. This does happen to be another transportation example, but Swiss Federal Railways, which is Switzerland's national railway company, one of the top ranked railway operators because of its high rate of use, its service quality, and its service rating. They invested to modernize their trains and create a smart, safe rail network. Huge investment. And the results here, again, just to tap into the results quickly, they cut device configuration times by more than 90%, down to 3 hours from 5 days. They support intelligent service devices with the scale of more than 100,000 onboard systems. This is what Edge can deliver. Again, right? It's secure, it's fast time to deploy, whether that be hardware configuration, application deployment, and it's at scale. This is the magic of Edge. So finally, just to wrap, if you move to the next slide, this world has been created over many years in order to be able to prepare this point in time in order to deliver Edge. It is the culmination of kind of this whole opportunity around hybrid cloud, in order to deliver from data center out to public cloud, whether you're doing containers, VMs, bare metal, and now this is extending out to the edge. There's no better time than now. The applications are there. This is the opportunity to pull it together. I firmly believe open source and the way open source works is going to be essential in order to ground this and keep this going. But it's going to take all of us. It's going to take a big ecosystem. But I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity we have ahead of us in Edge. Whether you're a chip architect or whether you're a developer for AI ML, it's a huge opportunity to change the way we do things. So with that, we left some time for questions. So let me do that.